Welcome to the News Bridge, United States. I'm Mia Agnes, bringing you breaking updates and the latest insights from around the globe. Ukraine has launched a bold counterattack in Russia's Kursk region, and here are some visuals of Kursk attack.
Машина пробита, поехали!
The Russian-Ukrainian war was one of the few conflicts where American Abrams faced off against Soviet tanks. Moreover, only the Ukrainian armed forces had the opportunity to compare the real combat characteristics of these vehicles firsthand, writes Business Insider. Soviet and American tanks, although they were created to counter each other, were made based on completely different concepts. Soviet T-series tanks, including the most common of them, the T-72, are smaller and lighter than the Abrams and have weaker armor. At the same time, their more compact dimensions make them a somewhat more difficult target. Soviet tanks also have an automatic gun loader, which has an ambiguous reputation. Once upon a time, the Abrams already fought against simple export versions of the T-72 in Iraq. In Ukraine, on the contrary, simple export versions of the Abrams are fighting against the most equipped Russian tanks. And yet, Ukrainian tank crews highly appreciate their Abrams. It is better than the T-72, T-62 and even the Russian T-90, the Ukrainian tank commander told the publication. Like other tanks and armored vehicles in Ukraine, the Abrams faces challenges from the constant threat of drones, mines and anti-tank missiles, forcing it into an unusual role, but the tank is still valuable. Along with Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, it has bolstered the combat capability of Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade. It is a far superior system. The A1 may be old in the sense that it's been in our inventory for a long time, but it's far superior to anything the Russians have, said military expert Robert Greenway, who handled Abrams during his army service. Soviet-style tanks are smaller targets, harder to hit and easier to hide. This smaller size means less demand for materials, allowing Russia to produce more of them. The US took a different approach. We never set out to make as many tanks as the Russians. We just set out to make one that could take out a few Russian tanks and survive the process, Greenway explained. The Soviet Union wanted more for less with greater mobility, while the US, concerned with the need to counter the onslaught of Soviet armor, focused more on firepower and survivability. The design of the Soviet tanks, smaller, lighter and lower to the ground, make them somewhat harder to hit in certain conditions and more mobile, but the tanks lack the thick armor that protects the Abrams crews. A telling point, the Abrams ammunition is stored behind the turret, separated from the crew by a protective door to improve crew survivability. Soviet-style tanks store ammunition directly in the turret, which can be disastrous if the ammunition catches fire when it hits the vehicle. One of the Abrams' advantages is its depleted uranium shells, which have increased penetration and are more likely to cause a fire in an enemy tank after penetrating its armor. The Russians have such shells too, but they are not used often. A powerful gas turbine engine can propel the 60-ton A1 to 72 kilometers per hour, giving the tank sufficient maneuverability. However, the Abrams is difficult to maintain. Russia plans to strike the Japanese nuclear power plant in the event of war, the Financial Times explained. The publication made such a conclusion after studying the secret documents of 2013 to 2014. Sources showed the documents according to which Russia trained its officers in 2008 to 2014. They say that in the event of a conflict on the eastern borders of the country, Russian troops will strike 160 objects in South Korea and Japan. Half of them are military bases, air bases, naval fleets, command posts. And the second half is civil objects, bridges, highways and railways, tunnels. The list of potential targets includes energy infrastructure, including nuclear power plants in Japan and chemical plants in Busan. Journalists also note that Russia's plans indicate confidence in its missile systems. It was planned to use X-101 missiles launched from Tu-160 bombers to attack the radar station on Okusiri Island. The probability of destroying the target was estimated at 85%. The Financial Times writes that during the war against Ukraine, the Russian rockets showed themselves poorly. According to FT sources, the documents are still relevant and show that the Russian military is afraid of attacks on the eastern borders of its country. Russians are worried about the defenselessness of the eastern part before the attack of the Americans, NATO, or their allies. In addition, it is clear from the documents why Russian military aviation makes regular flights along the borders of Japan and South Korea. The goal is to test the enemy's anti-aircraft defense, fixing where and when the planes will be raised to intercept the Russian forces. The occupying country, the Russian Federation, secretly prepared officers for attacks on Japan and the Republic of Korea, informs the edition of the Financial Times. Secret plans of the Kremlin have been found by journalists, and now they write with reference to these documents that the strike plans, which are mentioned in the military documents of the Russian Federation, envisage strikes on more than 160 objects, of which only 82 are military and the rest are civilian. At the same time, among the Russian targets, which became known thanks to the leak of secret documents, are the command posts of the armed forces of Japan and the Republic of Kazakhstan, as well as tunnels, radar installations, naval facilities, and the energy infrastructure of these countries. It is emphasized that the Kremlin chose targets for strikes very carefully. It is also noted in the secret documents with the help of which the armed forces of the Russian Federation are going to break through the defense of South Korea and Japan.